So yeah, I was telling you how like babies' arms have a mind of their own. I think they
Yeah,
literally do have a mind of their own. Like their brain is not interconnected enough
probably.
to like link up arms and like brain and like face and the rest
Yeah, no motor
of
skills.
everything else. Yeah. So they just use their arms to whack at themselves, to scratch themselves, to poke their eyes out, to wake themselves up from sleep.
Uh-huh. Cool.
Like
Yeah.
they'll startle awake and then they'll smack themselves in the face and then they'll be awake and then they're gonna cry. They'll actively rip the bottle out of their mouth and then wonder where it is. And it's like just got to get that hand coordination.
Yeah, just any or just put them in a straitjacket. I'm sure they'd love that too.
So you say that ironically. That is basically what you do with babies. You wrap them
Nice.
up so they're nice and snug, so they can actually get through sleep. Otherwise, they will
Um,
actively like kill themselves.
Little baby
Um,
burrito.
yeah, you make a little baby burrito. There's a very specific way of making sure it's tight, so
Okay.
their little squirmy arms don't crawl out like this. And then
That's awesome.
cause chaos, usually ripping the pacifier out of their mouth, and then they're like, "Where's the pacifier? I was eating that." And yeah,
It's all your fault.
that's what I've learned as a newly minted parent is babies just don't know how to use their arms, and they don't even know they have arms, and their arms don't even know they have a body, and they're just doing their thing, and that's okay. But yeah, it needs some time, apparently a few years, for it to all like interconnect, which is absolutely hilarious and also sleep depriving. Um,
Yes, no doubt.
Oh, I have the other cat here trying to come in. So babies and cats are also the same thing. They meow.
Yeah.
They are just as dumb. I'd say the cats are smarter at the moment, but not for long.
That's probably fair, yes.
Good stuff. Anyways, we should probably have a show about tech stuff.
All right.
Hello and welcome once again to episode 133 of Code Completion. We're a group of iOS developers and educators hoping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing your code. My name is Dimitri, and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
So, as always, we have a new batch of Swift Evolution updates to share with everyone. And today is actually one we've talked about in the past, but it's coming back into review because when it was accepted, Swift 5.8 was like already set to release, and it wouldn't have made it in. So this has kind of been part of the preview Swift work. What are those called? There's like a special term for the Swift compiler that's not part of Xcode. But this is part of the preview version of that currently. And as they were using it, they identified a few like areas where this could go. I don't want to say catastrophically wrong, but it can use some improvements. So that's what they did. I kind of described the whole why before talking about the what, and the what is the proposal for borrowing and consuming parameter ownership modifier. So this is marking variables, specifically function parameters, as borrowing or consuming, and this basically makes it much more clear that what happens when this happens on a non-copyable type, what happens when it happens on a copyable type, and how you can explicitly say, hey, I want to copy this thing. So you say copy, and then you say what you want to copy. So this prevents accidental copies by making sure it's very explicit whenever you are using these modifiers, to prevent yourself from like thinking you're doing the right thing and then not actually doing the right thing, which is kind
Hmm.
of like an anti-pattern in and of itself.
Yeah. There was a lot that I didn't really understand about this, but it sort of seems like, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, I'm kind of asking a question, I suppose. It's like, it's more like you're helping Arc by saying that you will take ownership of this object, or you're just borrowing something, and whoever is whoever you're borrowing it from is still sort of the owner of this thing as far as reference counting goes. Is that kind of right, or is this
I think
not.
you're making a wrong assumption in that this is specifically for Arc when I don't think it is at all. So
Oh,
this has
okay.
nothing to do with reference counting. This has to do with basically memory that is in the stack, where if a function basically is calling another function, that your struct, for instance, that stays in the stack. It's actually there.
Yeah.
But if you pass it to another function, that function now has a copy of your struct, and it's actually going to copy it on the stack, so that way it can make a modification to it. That is a horrible idea when you have big pieces of data.
Sure.
Namely, when it's not even on the stack, but maybe it's being referenced by a reference type like a class, but we're still dealing with these structs that have copy semantics rather than reference semantics. And this explicitly makes those copy semantics not copy semantics. Basically, you are basically saying, hey, I want to reference that same piece of memory that the other person was using, the other function was using, and I either want to allow someone else to make changes to that directly, or I want to disallow it completely. And this allows you to get a whole bunch of performance benefits, because if you don't need to copy 100 megabytes of data, and you can just use it as is, like a pointer, basically, then you can do things much more efficiently. But if you're using it as a pointer, then you're stepping into unsafe territory land, which is the whole reason why like Swift is a thing. Is because we want to get away from an unsafe language, which is what Swift talks about when it talks about being safe. It's talking about being memory safe, being like your code cannot write bad code that is something that someone else can kind of take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's like very specific. I guess. You're being specific about if you do want to be able to modify or let something else modify or not this struct or whatever you're copying.
Yeah, and once again, this is like super low level, so even even I, who have read over this several times, am still not 100% on it. So
yeah, it was.
I don't really want to like explain without having used it, because that's how at least my brain works. Is once I use something, then I'm much more comfortable with it. But if I'm just like reading about it, I can have a high level overview, but that's about as high as it gets. But basically, by marking things as borrowing and consuming, you can indicate to the system if an explicit copy should or should not happen, basically. And as a result of that, basically prevent at the compiler level, so give like a user error when you're trying to compile the code, that you're actually making a copy here. This is not what you actually want to do. So you need to say, I want to borrow this, and therefore it's not making a copy, but that's now very explicit. And you are limited in what you can do at that point. Like you can't necessarily make changes to it. It's no longer a mutable type, yada, yada, yada. So that's kind of where this is all coming together, and I definitely imagine we're going to see a lot more of it at WWDC, and by a lot more of it, probably just like a single session that's like super low level for the Swift nerds to kind of get accustomed to it, and that's probably only going to be used in like Swift Neo and super low level stuff in the kernel, because that's ultimately why this kind of code is necessary, right?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
In a similar vein, Apple now has, or they've always had, but they have a security blog. And on it, they went and talked about what if like Apple had a sock puppet vulnerability in iOS 16. And this is basically like the whole reason why Swift exists, is to prevent these kinds of like buffer overflow and out of memory access for pointers. And what essentially goes into preventing something like this. And to get to the nitty gritty, basically, Apple previewed quite a bit a while ago, maybe a year or two ago, a new type available to the kernel called kalloc type, and it allows, when you're allocating memory, to randomize where that memory ends up being allocated, and prevents a very consistent memory layout when you are actually allocating memory. So, for instance, in Ocarina of Time terms, if you are trying to do some stale reference manipulation to get a wrong thing happening and some code execution happening when it's not supposed to, by going in and out of loading boundaries to kind of get everything ordered just right, that would be impossible with this, because it actually is randomizing where the memory is ending up, not based on like where availability is, but just where like it can happen in the aggregate of like the whole memory space. So that's what this is talking about in detail. But if you have any interest in this sort of thing at all, I want to recommend people kind of check out this blog post. They haven't posted in like a year, so this is the first in a while, and it's very low level.
Yes.
But it does give you an idea of the kinds of things that Apple's thinking about, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, super cool. This is like so insanely in depth that I couldn't follow along at all with it. But there was one part kind of at the start that it says like using this approach, or using this vulnerability called Sock Puppet that existed pre iOS 12. It was addressed and fixed in 12.3 and 12.4.1. The conventional approach that this would be used under would have just an 8% success rate now with this kalloc type that Dimitri mentioned. So they have to do multiple sort of, I guess, setups and different approaches to potentially get something to work now, because all of the memory locations are randomized. So kind of a cool, that's really all I got out of it. I mean, they go into how the original exploit works and like all of these different things. I mean, it was very, very in-depth. So that was about all I got out of it. But it seems like a much more robust solution to prevent potential issues.
Yeah. And fun fact, Apple's security team does not only take security experts. They take people who are new to the field of, relatively new to the field of programming in general. And you will learn about these types of things. Like, the team is very open about teaching each other how to kind of work, because you don't necessarily need to think like an attacker to make these changes. You just need to think of novel ways that you can completely prevent whole classes of bugs from existing, right? And the really cool thing about this is a lot of this gets added to the C language, right? This is part of C. This is not part of Swift. This is not part of any newer memory safe language. This is in memory unsafe language. What can we do to like safeguard ourselves just a little bit more, so that way, even if we do shoot ourselves in the foot, we shoot ourselves in a non-deterministic way that's going to be hard to hard for someone to take advantage of, right?
Yeah, definitely.
In a completely different set of news, Apple is finally getting into the AI space, and they're making sure that Siri is the best conversationalist you can ever have, and I'm completely pulling this out of my behind, because they did not do that. They did something completely out of left field, I think, and they're bringing AI for accessibility, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a really interesting way of incorporating AI, and this sort of goes along with a bunch of AI changes that they're making, and it's like in part of this article it mentions having like calling it like a grandpa mode or a grandparent mode, which is like perfect, because my grandpa has an iPhone, but the dynamic type is like turned all, or he's
turned to 11,
on,
right?
Yeah, like the accessibility dynamic type, so it's like extra, 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 extra large type, just so he can read it and everything. And this looks perfect for him. So it's got a bunch of things. So there's like assistive access that is just a simplified UI that makes everything very large. I don't think it would work for every app, but it has it works for phone, messages, photos, camera, music, and TV. And it blows everything up. So everything is very easy to see. Like the photos grid is like, it's a grid, but there's only 2 photos per sort of row. And so it's just very large. But then, like Dimitri said, it's also getting into like AI stuff where it can create sort of an AI voice of yourself. So you could send voice messages or probably use it for phone calls, I suppose. I can't remember if I read that or not, but using sound bites, it can do that. Or it even says you can pick a sort of a pre-canned voice if you're unable to even give it voice samples at all. Something that's perhaps similar to you, but it has you like read phrases to be able to generate your own AI voice. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. That's not everything, but that's kind of, I think, probably the biggest AI thing, and that seems like a very wholesome way of using AI, especially with all of this stuff that people are doing AI voice generation for, like robocalls, and I've heard of some that people will use. I don't know how well it works, but they'll make it seem like you got in an accident and they call your loved ones and it's an AI voice of you saying you got in trouble and you need, or like you're in jail or something and you need bail or whatever. This is like a very wholesome spin on that. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like the can of worms has already been opened, so let's at least use the technology for good rather than for a movie production because people are too lazy to pay actors to say the line again, or B, like doing very mean things like this is one I heard from a few years ago. They were basically sampling when you answer a phone call and you say hello. And they use your hello to synthesize a voice that was very similar to you. And since the phone system is so low fidelity in terms of like actually being able to comprehend and know if someone actually is who they are. I mean, you can call someone and say you're their grandchild and they'll believe you. So if you can do it and actually sound like their grandchild, then I think game over at this point. And yeah, we're basically at that stage. I mean, if you've seen all the stupid Balenciaga videos on YouTube,
I love those, dude. They're so good.
Then that is kind of the can of worms that's already open. So that's unfortunate, but I think the silver lining here is like you said, it allows people who potentially can't speak anymore to kind of regain their voice. And this was kind of made popular by Dr. Stephen Hawking, right? I don't know if younger folks will know of him, but definitely our generation kind of grew up with him as a science advocate. And I never knew what he sounded like other than through his speech-to-text or his text-to-speech synthesis. And this is what that's basically allowing anyone with an iPhone to do without getting any extra software or anything like that. So I think that's really cool, especially when you know that you might have ALS and you can kind of do it early, right? You can kind of prepare for the inevitable that you know is coming, but at the very least you'll be able to keep with very high fidelity nowadays what your voice sounded like, and that can be like the smallest thing to someone or the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. They added a more detection features to the magnifier app, and I thought this one was kind of cool because, let's see, it says it's designed to identify and read incidental text like button labels you'd find on a vending machine or a kitchen appliance display. And so what they've done now is it looks like you drag your finger around the actual physical thing, not on the phone, as sort of to tell the phone, hey, this is the thing that I want to know what the text is. Mm-hmm. So they make the...
that's really cool.
Yeah, it says it makes it a lot easier to correctly choose Coke rather than accidentally pushing the sprite button, which is like, that's super cool. So you can say like, I want, there's a whole bunch of text all over this, what the camera's seeing. Tell me what this thing is, and you kind of circle around it, and it can tell you exactly what that is. So you make sure you choose the right thing, or read, what you're actually looking for. So, yeah, super cool stuff all around. I mean, it's very cool to see. One thing I should mention is like that AI generated voice. It's all done on device, so you can't like have it be your new Siri voice assistant or whatever. So it was super cool that all of the ML stuff that they put into Apple Silicon is really getting used for like all of this on-device stuff. It doesn't have to be sent off device. I'm sure it would probably just work without needing an internet connection or anything. So that's great.
Yeah. The first feature you're talking about, I think it's called assistive access, where everything kind of gets simplified. It reminds me of Simple Finder, and I don't know if this is still an option available on macOS today, but Simple Finder made the Mac very simple. It simplified all the menus, it simplified the dock, it simplified the windows that you're interacting with. Like, you don't close the main window that's there. That's the one that's kind of present with all the stuff, all your stuff in it. So this kind of reminds me a little bit about that, and I really hope that we as developers get APIs to interact with this, because even just like the dynamic text, cranking that to the maximum, like as a developer, that can be really hard to work with. And there's one secret solution: put everything in a scroll view. Like every screen is a scroll view, and then just throw design out the window if you detect that things are getting to a certain size. Just make sure it's linear, top to bottom. You're showing the content that you need to show, and that oftentimes like does the trick, and makes it very easy to kind of use and phone in that like condition. Otherwise, like you might want to set it to that, but then apps like, oh, but I didn't have enough room to show my two labels side by side. Doesn't matter. There's nothing side by side anymore. Everything is top down, and that simplifies everything, especially once it doesn't fit anymore. And Swift UI makes this very easy too, with like view that fits, which is that new kind of view modifier that just will pick the one that fits best. And if you have a few different sizes of what you want to configure, then that will kind of do the right thing there. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah. This also mentions that like the Photos and Music app display their contents in a grid that's like flatter than like hierarchical. So you're probably not using you're not pushing to new view controllers. So it would be really cool to...
So they fixed the music app. No, I'm just kidding.
Kind of, yeah. But it would be cool, like you say, to have API access to say, like, here's a completely alternative UI. I think the scroll view would totally work, but it would be really nice to just have a, like, tailor-made UI for this mode so that, you're offering a really good experience either way. So,
yeah, this feels like a different app that you're building.
Exactly.
And you're just distilling all the functionality to nothing for the people who need, like, the very basics of the basics. You're not going for... tremendous functionality here, so that's perhaps hard for most apps. Like you're going down into the your app has limited functionality class of problems, and then like what are you competing on, like what merits, like, so that's going to be interesting to see if this is something that is open to third parties, how they're going to like work around it. It might just be useful to apps that already have like a foothold, in which case you're kind of removing functionality from the people who already learned how to use it. So maybe it's only for new users, and those new users are probably not going to be downloading apps. They just need a functional device they need the flip phone. And this is their flip phone at that point. So maybe it doesn't need a third party access. And I went full circle there on that.
I think there's a lot of ways that it could be solved. Yeah, definitely.
And then my final note that I wanted to bring up is If you don't know about the magnifier app, this is something that I think you access via Control Center if you set it up. And this is this is the opposite of simple. It has so many features and functionality that have just been dumped in it. If you thought the camera app was complex with like all the various things that it can do, like QR codes and all that, the magnifier app just takes that to 11. It's basically a camera app whose sole purpose is not necessarily taking pictures, but to analyze the world around it. And you can really zoom things in, or you can change color filters. You can have it detect stuff. And this really smells like a default mode that a certain headset might have. The more I think about it. Now, I'm not talking about for like everyday people, but if you have accessibility needs, you might flip a switch or two, and the headset is just capable of doing all these things, potentially to your benefit. Like if this might give a way for people with low like vision, who like whether you're classified as blind because you cannot see anything or because you can just see very little, this might help you by being your eyes, right? And I don't know how that's going to come to fruition like with version 1, but I can definitely see a version of Apple's headset in the future not necessarily concentrating on having visors at all, right? And just have the camera set up for someone to be able to just point their head and point at something without holding up their phone, right?
That would be nice.
That's kind of like what I'm envisioning here. And maybe at this point you like also have the whole goggle set up, and people might ask like, hey, you're blind, why do you need to see anything? And well, you're not really seeing, you're hearing at that point. Or it might be pulling into focus something that you could never quite put into focus, right? Because of your limited capabilities that you might have. And I don't mean to say this as like, this is the same thing as being blind. It is not. But to give you an idea of what counts as blindness, if I take my glasses off, I am blind. Like, by law, I am not allowed to drive. I'm not allowed to do many things. And that counts as a disability. If I cannot wear my glasses for whatever reason, I am 100% disabled. And yes, it's not the same thing as like being blind and needing a cane, for instance. Like that is a completely separate category, and I acknowledge that because I'm able to solve my disability with a relatively cheap, if it wasn't owned by
Monopoly.
Yeah, owned by Monopoly. Solution that is like one way around it, but that is kind of like if I don't need to wear my glasses and I can wear an Apple headset that puts things into focus and gives me much more, then I might consider to do that much more often than otherwise because like I need to put something on my face, right? And it's just an option of like what to put.
Yeah, I was looking for my driver's license. It has, like the Class D or whatever exception of like, need to have some augmented vision, whatever it says.
My favorite is when I went to get that renewed and they asked me to read the sign. I'm like, don't bother. Like I cannot read it without my glasses.
Just give me the exception.
Yeah, just I need corrective lenses. Thank you.
Oh yes, that yeah.
On the topic of such a reality headset, we don't know what's actually going to be called, but that's kind of what's in the rumors. It seems that xrOS has been trademarked for your iPhone XR.
Yeah, kind of interesting. Wait, for your iPhone XR? Whoa. Hold on. Are we getting... Okay. It's an OS. Yeah. So it was the New Zealand Intellectual Property Office confirmed the registration of xrOS, and it's like specifically it has a screenshot of it in like San Francisco font. So like, interesting. It says that it's owned by Deep Dive LLC. So that's kind of interesting, but yeah, that's probably what the OS is gonna be called. I think it mentions that they've kind of been Apple did something similar, but with the trademark and wordmark Reality OS. So internally, Apple had been considering both Reality OS and xrOS, meaning Extended Reality OS.
So some live feedback here. xrOS auto completes to bros.
Nice, I like that. Yeah,
And also I'm assuming it's not pronounced 10ROS,
xrOS.
right?
Oh yes.
Because it was the iPhone 10R.
Yes, and Mac OS 10. Yes.
Yeah.
It autocorrects to bros. That's so good.
I think we have a title. Now, on to completely different news. We have some new apps that launched in the past week, and some are under some more scrutiny than others. The first is Kaleidoscope 4, which they released a blog post, I think, like a week or two ago, basically saying ahead of time, hey, they're not going to have they're not going to have a one-time purchase for Kaleidoscope 4. They're going with subscription billing for it, which is very interesting. But they did overhaul the app and put a bunch of effort into building something that very few people probably use. Certainly not enough to keep a team of several kind of employed full time. So and maybe this is the way that they have to do it, right?
Yeah, it's definitely hard juggling that subscription model, and but it does have some cool things. Syntax coloring, I think, is cool. Like I use just like file merge when I need to deal with a merge conflict because it's like built in and it works fine. And generally, the merge conflicts I use aren't I deal with aren't super complex. So I don't think I need syntax highlighting to understand what's going on or anything.
And to be clear, file merge may be older than us.
Yeah, it's freaking old, but it works great. It works great. There's nothing. I don't know.
Let's see what the copyright says. I'm now curious.
Yeah, I will say one thing. I know that we do use Kaleidoscope for as an FOR, not FOUR. The new version.
Okay, no, we are older than file merge. It is 1996, but not by much.
Barely scraped by there. Okay. One thing that we do use Kaleidoscope for is we do screenshot comparisons in our testing. So it's really cool that you can pull two images in and it will like give you a visual sort of, I don't really know how to explain it, a visual outline of what's different. So it's useful and we do use it internally at work, but I don't use it personally. Our person that mostly deals with testing does. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a great tool, and it has a lot of uses. I was one of the people who spent, I think, $170 on Kaleidoscope 3, and I used it a bunch. I don't know if I used it $174 worth for my day-to-day work. So, like, personally, I don't think I have a need to subscribe to it. That said, if I do have a need, I now know that it's available. And I guess I can go ahead and use it for periods of time when I do need to use it, right? Now that it is subscription, it's not something that you necessarily need to do constantly. So that's how it is. I of course wish them success in doing this, because this is the kind of thing that can either make or break your company that you're trying hard with. And they clearly took several bets, putting it on the App Store, for instance. And now I think they're completely off the App Store for this version. I don't think it's going to be back on there. They had a bunch of trouble with having the command line utility be part of the App Store version. It was a big mess. So I'm hoping that it works well for them. But yeah, I think it's kind of went out of scope for ever more people who were just fans of the original Kaleidoscope when it came out and kind of kept up with it up until today.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about software we are fans of, Panic also released a new version of a piece of software that I believe it was just last week that I spoke and got a little bit angsty about, and that was Nova, because Nova 11 just came out, and Nova 11 concentrates on a few things in particular, the workspace, making sure that Git support is much better, nice. And adding a lot more support for different font features so that way you can get all your funky ligatures and stuff like that. And importantly, if you scroll down in the fix section, and I'm going to need to find the exact one here, but it says, and I quote, "Fix the potential crash when attempting to display tooltips for text decorations that have already been removed." And I happen to know that is exactly the bug that I was hitting, because I have looked at a lot of crash logs and I know exactly that it's NS tooltip that was crashing constantly. So I am very happy to get to use this once I'm back doing TypeScript development and no longer human development. And yeah, I'm happy to report that this is supposedly fixed, and if you ran into this trouble as well, it is now a solved problem. And everyone who is doing anything other than Swift development should go check out Nova, which, by the way, also has an official Swift extension, nice. So that way you can do Swift development in Nova. So if you're doing like a Swift package and you don't necessarily want to bring all of Xcode up, then you can just go ahead and use Nova, and that is super cool. Especially since you just need the command line utilities to get the Swift compiler, I believe. Like, you don't need all of Xcode. So if you do not have 5G, this is an opportunity to be much faster doing server-side development using Nova rather than using Xcode.
Yeah, maybe I'll... I was going to say it looks awesome. I have no reason to use it, but maybe I'll try it with some Vapor stuff. That'd be cool. There's like a free trial, right?
Yeah, there's a generous free trial. All the extensions are findable in the app itself. And in general, it's just a pleasure to use because the
Sweet.
Folks at Panic made it.
Yes,
and other than that one crash that I constantly hit, that seems to be fixed, I think that there's really nothing else that I would call a big shortcoming of Nova. So
nice.
It's way better than VS Code, and that's all that matters. VS Code is hot garbage. So I'm glad that Swift developers have an alternative that is not VS Code to Xcode, and that's Nova, which is awesome.
Nice.
Talking about alternatives, Apple Silicon is much faster running on a Mac, well, obviously, but a Mac running Asahi Linux. For those who have not been keeping up with the spelunking that some folks have been doing, this is a particular version of Linux which has been otherwise tailor-made for Apple Silicon, and they've been slowly porting over basically everything to this new CPU class. And it turns out that Linux is much faster at certain things than macOS. So, for instance, just expanding or unexpanding. I'm not sure what my tar
I don't know what
tar flags are. But if you're doing one of those things on macOS, it takes 6.8 seconds, which is great. If you're using Asahi Linux, it takes 1 second. So it's quite the difference. And it's not just it's overall, no matter what you do, it's just much faster on the same exact hardware, which is a little bit embarrassing for Apple. And I know this is embarrassing for Apple because I use their computers daily, and I can go ahead and attest to the fact that macOS is not as stable as it used to be. And sometimes it's a hot piece of garbage, namely with regard to how much stuff you can have open. It's did not go through the rigorous testing necessary to have 50 windows open, right? And I'm not talking about 2,000. I'm just talking about more than like you have a clutter on your desk, right? Because your brain is a clutter, so you put that on your screen instead of on the physical surface, and this is something that your computer no longer is capable of handling. And we were talking about this with Spencer a little bit. Like, I used an iBook G3 with 256 megabytes, count them, of RAM. And you probably can't count them. It's still a lot. But that was capable of dealing with the hodgepodge that is my brain in a way that a modern computer cannot. On Safari 1, this is not like Safari 1 would crash and lose everything when it got to a web page that didn't like. It had its issues, but you could have lots of things open because guess what it did? It just paged stuff to RAM, to disk. A spinning disk in a laptop.
Yeah.
The most horrible thing possible. It was slow. Sure, fine. I'm happy with things being a little bit slow, especially with our super fast SSDs that go at gigabytes per second. Gigabytes, not bits. So, like, I don't know what the issue is here. I don't know if we're trying to save the SSDs in our computers because people buy the ones that have the most limited SSD because Apple sells those. Maybe if you just have the big SSDs, it just turns off these optimizations that try to, like, save it. I really don't know what to say at this point, but I absolutely believe that Linux is faster. Unfortunately, Linux does not have a good web browser other than Chrome, and I don't want to use Chrome. So I'm not going to use Linux, but Apple should be embarrassed about these numbers and should work hard to improve them because it is embarrassing. That's all I can say.
It is embarrassing. It's, and, I don't know if Asahi Linux specifically is like open source or how different, distros work like that. But they could just like take the work that they're doing and I don't know. I feel like I don't know. It's a bummer. It's a huge bummer that, like you said, macOS is not as stable as it used to be. I started using macOS like in Lion. So, I mean,
Lion 10.5, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think you've been using it way longer than I have, but I never had problems until like, I don't know, Catalina, maybe?
I remember when we installed macOS 10 on my mom's laptop, and we spent like 5 minutes to get to text edit, and it wouldn't open like the simple text files that we had, and we were like, nope. Or we went the opposite direction. Like it opened the simple text files, but then we saved them and we popped over back to macOS 9, dual booted. And none of the RTF documents were readable, and we were like, nope, not using this yet.
No, that's fair.
Definitely some growing pains getting macOS to like a happy place, but it genuinely was one of the best operating systems available at the time. And especially grew into being one of the best operating systems. And sure, nowadays it has a lot more to contend with, but I think years of neglect from dealing with the shadow that is from iOS, I think have left it in a very sorry state. And it's unfortunate because it's hard to use as something for work. And that's like the only thing that macOS still has a strong suit with, is using it as a tool for work. And if it makes that hard, like I imagine the people who like do 3D development or like not programming, but they actually use their computers for something like actually strenuous on like the hardware for a different reason, if they're running into these same issues, or if they are just used to shutting down their computer every night. And not having like long-standing problems from that. So I really don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be complaining. I have 5G internet now. I can just like reload all those Safari windows like nothing.
Yeah, but
and I should just like restart every day. And maybe I wouldn't have any issues either. But it feels silly.
Yeah, and I mean, you're definitely paying the ultra premium of what any Apple device costs, right? So it should just work. I don't know. I watched a DankPod video. I don't know if you watch DankPods, but I've been watching him for like years. He does like the iPod, mod stuff, and now it's just more general stuff. And what he did was He's in Australia, and he bought a studio display for $2,500, probably in Australian dollars. Uh, and he updated the firmware on it, and it bricked it. And he was just so pissed. And like, that's the kind of thing. It's like, I agree. I think iOS, and then probably by extension iPadOS, takes precedence over everything else, and there's just not as much QC put into anything else. And like, he took it back, and they gave him his money back. But like, that sucks. It's a monitor, you know what I mean? So I don't know. And then macOS itself is just like, I don't know how much like a fully kitted out Mac Studio costs, like $6,000 or something. It shouldn't have these problems with X amount of windows open, right? So
yeah, it's kind of silly. I credit where credit's due. Apple does do a good job of, hey, if your monitor gets bricked because of a failed software update, you're not going to need to do too much out of the ordinary to get that replaced or just get your money back entirely. Like, they're not going to pull a fast one on you to say like, you didn't get your 6-year warranty with us,
Apple
and
Care,
therefore, like car warranty, and they are one of the better companies to deal with for most things. Like, they take your benefit in the doubt the majority of the time. That said, it shouldn't be breaking to begin with, right?
Yeah.
The hardware is of such an incredible amount of quality higher than the software that they're putting on it, and that is so sad, right? It's not like we're in the old Apple days where it's like, oh, the capacitors are not good quality, and therefore the thing is blowing. Like, maybe with the HomePod that was the case, but they fixed that. And for most of their hardware, like, it's rock solid. Heck, it works better with a different operating system, right?
Yeah.
That's like...
It's the software. It's definitely the software.
I don't know if they don't have that. Maybe they don't have the software expertise anymore, and they don't have the leeway and enough of an engineering team to like that knows of these problems to fix them. And there's like
why don't they have that? They have so many employees. Why can't they find someone? They have all the money in the world.
Because they don't want. Oh, I have the solution. Or I know the problem and the symptom. They don't want to hire remote folks. So all the people who are really good, they finally decided, I don't want to live in Cupertino anymore, and they moved. And Apple is not on board with keeping those folks employed at their company, and therefore they aren't working there. Imagine how many of the like earnest developers on the App Store would just give up indie development to work at Apple if Apple just said, hey, do you want to work for us? Here is like, we're never going to say like, oh, we're not doing Swift development or we're not doing iOS development anymore. We're like, that's Apple. You're going to be able to continue doing that. Have great job security, and just be able to work from home. And I would say 8 out of 10 third-party developers would probably say yes to that opportunity. Yeah. And Apple could probably take all of the third-party developers and just have them work at Apple and improve things and have a bunch of really cool first-party apps. That is a solution that Apple could do, that they refuse because like those folks are not working in Cupertino in an office.
So dumb.
So that's the way it is.
Yep.
Talking about things that are not dumb, I think this is amazing actually. Google Analytics is basically illegal in Europe now. Which is absolutely, like, I don't know how we got to this point, but we got to it. And there is a way around it, and I'll just talk about that right away. If you are a European company and you want to use Google Analytics, all you need to do is set up a proxy server where all requests go to that proxy server first, and then they go to Google Analytics. And also strip out like UTM codes that say like where people came from. Then it's legal. So that's like the exception. But if you use Google Analytics by default, by having your customers point to Google servers as a result of visiting your website, you can get in big trouble with GDPR. And honestly, like, that is amazing that that is, like, the outcome that we got to. Go Europe.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, they're just not stripping out personal identifiers, so it's like, that's pretty bad. I don't know why. I guess I know why Google's not doing it themselves or whatever. It's not. I mean, I'm sure they want.
Well,
that
they're going to
information.
have to now that the
Yeah.
service is by de facto
Yes.
illegal. If they
Yes.
still want people to give them money, they're going to need to make some change.
Yeah. So that's not shocking, I guess I should say. But yeah.
I mean, honestly, this is kind of useful regulatory pressure, right? It's not
Yeah,
fining
yeah.
Google. It's basically saying, hey, Google, you're on your own. Hey, every company that's working with Google, you're on the naughty list. And Google is in trouble because if they don't want to lose all those customers, which are giving them money, they don't want to lose money, not by having to give it to the government, but by it no longer coming into their wallet. They need to make a change. And the change that they can do is to make it more private. And if they don't do that, those customers are going to leave. It's not like the other situation where Facebook is like, well, our users are not going to leave, right? So you can fine us, and sure, we'll pay the fine, but we're making more money every month than that fine is per year.
That fine was like way big, wasn't it? Wasn't like $1.3 billion,
Yeah.
And they're still like, whatever.
I think they make $2 billion in revenue a month from European users. So
Unreal, dude.
because those customers are not going to leave. So like
Yeah.
these are two very different situations. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because Google is going to probably make a move this time and not just be okay paying some sort of fine because they're not the ones being fined this time. It's going to be European companies, which are absolutely going to move. Like they're not going to continue using Google Analytics if this is like the danger that them existing poses, right? Because they don't have the capacity to pay those fines. So they're probably going to either dump Google Analytics or use Google Analytics in a way that makes Google Analytics essentially useless. So that's going to be like, there's tons of other providers that do it in a European safe way. So they can go ahead and use them, which
Right.
means that Google's going to essentially, they're cut out of an entire market, whether they like it or not.
Awesome.
So that is very interesting.
So one thing that I thought was interesting about this whole thing is that they determined that no proof of data abuse was like needed. Like there didn't need to be like any precedent for this or anything. So like the assessment was like, it wasn't that they had to actually be able to identify, or they didn't have to already have identified the user. The fact that it was theoretically possible for them to do that was like a violation of GDPR. So they're like kind of preempting this, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
kind of preempting.
I guess Google can still sue the government and try to like appeal these decisions because they are the ones that are
Sure.
hurt by this decision at the end of the day. So we'll see how well that goes and how well Europe cares. I don't think they care. And at the end of the day, like you can't go boohoo to people who don't care. So we'll see. On the topic of other very foolish things that Google has done recently, they have created new top-level domains, namely .zip and .mov. And I'm just going to read out to you a URL, and you tell me if it sounds legit or not. https://github.com/kubernetes/kubernetes, like standard GitHub repo, right? /archive/ref/tags, standard tags URL, /@v1271.zip. And this can very well be a phishing link because
Yeah.
it turns out URLs can have an @ sign. And if URLs have an @ sign, everything before the URL, not the server, not the path, it's all the username. And that means that everything after the @ sign, that's the server. So in this case, v1271.zip, that is a actual domain, an actual website that you can load. Yeah, that's very dangerous. to say the least.
This is so bad. It talks about like some let's see if I can find it. It talks about a couple sort of like domain names like getting rejected because they would have, I think, what are called collisions with like local things like .local, .localhost. But like this is like, I think personally just as bad if you're able to you're essentially completely fooling whoever is looking at the link. Most people aren't going to look at the link. They'll click on it. And even if you are a little bit more technologically savvy,
no one knows the @ rule.
Yeah, I didn't know the @ existed until this whole thing came up. You're going to look at it and be like, yeah, that's fine. And it talks about like there being Unicode characters that look like a / but they're a little bit different. That can be
because web browsers they know this is possible, so they've long since ignored /. But guess what? There's tons of things that look like /. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's shockingly bad at that. Google especially it's not like some random I don't know what you call it, domain like people, the company that
they may as well be.
Yeah, it's freaking Google, dude. They know, and they're like their impetus for these two things are so bad because it's like all a marketing thing. So .zip is the aim is to designate tying things together or moving really fast, and moving pictures and whatever moves you. Those are the impetuses, but whatever. Those are the reasons for impeti. Yeah, for .zip and .mov. It's like that's the dumbest thing I have ever heard of for something that can be so potentially catastrophic for phishing or downloading potentially harmful files. I mean, it's flabbergasting how bad this could be.
So Spencer, I have some real-time homework I'd like for you to do. Can you please go to yourmom.zip?
Oh, I'm scared. Okay.
What does it say there?
413 request entity too large.
Haha. But
okay. Yeah, it took me a second. Good job.
So I did not make that up, obviously. Someone else just went and got yourmom.zip as a domain. It looks
official, yeah.
And then had a very real HTTP error code be returned there. But jokes aside, basically everyone is saying to just blackhole.zip accesses on like company firewalls and stuff like that, because nothing good is going to be on a .zip website, unfortunately, thanks to Google. And same with .mov is probably just as bad. So nothing can be trusted anymore. And I especially want to call out on this Ars Technica site. There's a bunch of ads on here, some for like medication, and they all have like the small text thing, but it's in this giant, like the ad is like super thin, and then it has like a scroll area that just scrolls forever with all the fine print for the medication, and I thought that was hilarious.
Love it.
So this is me using the regular internet for the first time in forever, discovering things live on a podcast. But yeah, this is hilarious. This is why I think it's kind of a mistake that ICANN opened up top-level domains to private companies. Because at this point, like, no one can do anything to say to Google, hey, you can't do this. They can just do it, and which they did, without actually checking with anyone if this was a good idea or not.
There's no way they didn't think internally that someone didn't bring up, like, oh yeah, this is a terrible idea. I don't know.
I mean, they didn't listen to them.
Obviously.
Yeah. Talking about top-level domains, I have a cool tip and trick to share. You probably have like a reasonably long Apple ID password, and you probably need to type it absolutely everywhere, and sometimes you just want to like find it quickly when the little password thing shows up. And unfortunately, Apple is no longer the top thing on a list anymore, because you have like Amazon,
Sure.
ADP, Airbnb, like all sorts of things now above the fold in an alphabetical listing. And you, like me, probably wanted a field to have your Apple ID be at the very top, but still being keychain, so it's kind of secure. So I recommend everyone abuse top-level domains and go ahead and save your Apple ID username and password under a.apple. Apple is a top-level domain owned by Apple, so no one can phish that, which is a good place to like save a password if you want. And turns out a.apple is on top of absolutely everything.
Sure.
You can probably do like 0.apple if something came up before a.apple, which would be weird. But that's where I save my Apple ID. So then anytime I need to like type in my Apple ID and my device is being stupid about not allowing me to autocomplete it, but was smart enough to show me the little passwords thing on the keyboard, I can now tap that, and the first thing there is my Apple ID. So that's my little tip and trick to getting to passwords quickly if you use iCloud.
Nice. Yeah, Apple's naming scheme all those years ago coming in clutch now, even today.
On the topic of things that Apple has named, they have named another framework that I don't think anyone really registered existed, but probably came out last year at WWDC, and that is Spacial.framework. And it is a framework full of like 3D math stuff. And I think that's pretty cool. So just wanted to call it out.
Yeah, probably going to be fairly useful for things that come out in June, would be my guess.
Probably. The only funny thing about this, as Nick Lockwood points out when they discovered this, is that Apple has a whole bunch of different ways to represent 3D transformations now. There's a CA Transform 3D, GLK Matrix 4, SCN Matrix 4, SIMD Float 4x4, RealityKit.transform, Spatial.projected transform 3D. And I'm sure there are more, but this is from Core Animation. What's GLK? GLK is OpenGL.
OpenGL.
SceneKit, SIMD, which is the Accelerate framework, and then RealityKit, and now Spatial. So you think that Apple probably should have like aliased some of these once they came out with the new type, but they probably couldn't because it's all like binary blah blah blah. There's a term for it. I am sleep deprived, so I'm not going to remember it. But yeah, I think it's funny that there's like 17 different versions of the same thing. So hopefully this all kind of goes into Spatial, and then you can use Spatial for all sorts of use without kind of bringing in everything else. This is ideally a very small framework that has tons of useful math functions that just get included if you use the function and not if you don't, kind of thing. So that'd be really nice. And then our last news update for the week, and that is Drobo and Retrospect, which some folk may not have heard that word for a good few decades. They do backup software, or they did, I should say, because both of those, the parent company is filing for bankruptcy, and they actually filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy like last year. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is different than Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Basically means you're reorganizing, and basically you reorganize before you file for real bankruptcy. Basically every scenario that gets into Chapter 11 bankruptcy does not really make it at the end. It's just CEOs trying to spare themselves, I think. And that comes from firsthand experience being in a company that filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. It got sold. Yeah, that's what ended up happening. And in this case, Drobo did not get sold. No one bought them, probably. And therefore it's being left to die, and being liquidated, for all its assets. So that's cool. It was cool while it lasted, I guess.
Yep. They only made like direct attached storage stuff, right? They didn't make NASs or anything.
They did make a NAS that they did not add Ethernet to, like, until a few years ago. It was weird.
Interesting.
Yeah. I heard both great things and horror stories from Drobo. The great things were like it really simplified the whole RAID setup. Like, you don't think about it as being a RAID. You just add another drive, and then you get extra performance and space. And that was great in a time when we did not have terabytes available to us, right? It's like, oh, I'm adding another 30 gigabytes. Like, that's going to be useful.
Woohoo. Yeah.
But nowadays, like, it just became more and more practical to have a single disk that just housed everything, or to have a real RAID setup if you really needed the performance. Not to mention, since Drobo is proprietary, if anything went wrong on your disk, like, everything went poof, because turns out having a RAID is not backup. Who'd have thunk? Definitely not the people who made RAID, who constantly remind you RAID is not backup. But this was not a RAID, so no one was there to remind you to use Retrospect, which is a backup software, to another Drobo. But yeah. This week's episode of Code Completion is brought to you by Sticky Widgets. Sticky Widgets is the absolute easiest way to put a sticky note on your home screen and edit it quickly. It's so easy you never need to open the app itself. Add a sticky widget to your home screen through the iOS home screen editor and tap on it to edit. That's about it. Of course, there's tons of customization options as well: font, color, text, size, alignment, all conveniently located in the system's edit widget interface. Add as many sticky widgets as you like, or put them in a smart sack. Sticky widgets are digital sticky notes for your phone. Use them however you'd like. Sticky Widgets is a free download for the App Store, and additional font and color options are available for a one-time in-app purchase. Thank you so much to Sticky Widgets for sponsoring Code Completion. Check out Sticky Widgets on the iOS App Store today. So, Spencer, I have a Code Completion tip for you, and that is all about using Markdown for your projects. So say you have a repo, right, and you are going and writing up the README. And you want to add useful information there, but you don't want to like be too wordy. You want to like hide that information, and you want like a handy little disclosure thing. Well, it turns out that is like fully supported in GitHub Markdown, and that is to use the details HTML tag. So if you open angle bracket details close angle bracket, and then open angle bracket summary close angle bracket, you can go ahead and type a title for your disclosure thing. Open angle bracket / summary, close angle bracket to close out the summary, and then anything else you put there, the whole paragraph, that will be part of the disclosure. And then don't forget to close your details tag at the end of that. And that's really, really neat when you want to like show or hide information based on like where a user is really looking. And so that way they can quickly scan through like an FAQ that you might have, and then not need to like read paragraphs in between every item, for instance. So that's really, really cool. But if you just do it like that, you can't actually use Markdown, and that's somewhat surprising. You might be like, hey, I want to actually use Markdown in this, and you can't. Now the secret is to add new lines before and after the text that is in there. So if you have your details tag, your summary tag, new line, then have some text, that text can be Markdown. There's a separate issue. It might have like a new line before the disclosure triangle because you put a new line there. And the solution to that is make sure that that Markdown is a header of some sort. So pound sign, for instance, so get an H3 is probably good enough, but you can go more or less as you need. And same goes for the contents of the details. So I linked a gist of people like discovering this in real time for themselves, because they're like, okay, this is super great. Oh, it turns out you can do this. Oh, it turns out you can do this. Oh, it turns out you can do this. So that's a really cool gist if you haven't seen it. That goes over all this.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. I think I've expressed my love for Markdown multiple times. But that's super cool. That specifically in like is this like only with GitHub Markdown, like GFM?
I think so, but since this is technically HTML, it should work in other things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
that is
I haven't tried it
nice.
in other context.
Okay. But it is super nice. Yeah, I've definitely seen READMEs where it's just like, a deluge of information that like they've got tables in there. And it's just like way too much information for you to like reasonably skim through. So that's nice that you could section it out a little bit and sort of use disclosure triangles to actually read what you need to care about and ignore what you don't. So nice. That's a good tip.
Yeah. And you can also default these to open if you want. So if you say open angle bracket details space open close angle bracket, it will be open by default. So it doesn't mean that like you need to like have all these be closed and hide a bunch of information. You can show it all up front. The nice thing about the open ones though is someone can methodically close them like a checklist after they're done reading them, especially if you have a lot of them. So for instance, I ran into this because I'm starting a new project and I wanted to have a public list of goals that was in the README, like things I want to attain by the end of 1.0, right? That I didn't necessarily get to in iteration 0 because I didn't have a time to write much code for it yet. But I wanted to like get my brain matter onto the paper in some way. And that is like how I'm doing it. I'm going through listing the goals and then giving details about those goals so I don't forget the details down the line using the details disclosure. So that's really useful, and I look forward to sharing that project when it's ready.
Nice.
On to another favorite corner of this podcast, and that is our mini review corner. And this week I'm continuing a part 2 review of what I kind of went over loosely last week, and that is the Breville Smooth Wave Microwave. This one is not app powered, but it has wave in it twice, to the point where they don't even call it a microwave, they just call it the smooth wave. And I basically got it because we needed a new microwave because ours was very bad and too small, but also very bad. It had a dial for the time.
Wow.
So if you wanted 10 seconds, you counted 10 seconds in your head because there's no 10-second marker on that thing. You just kind of set it to a minute, count 10 seconds, and open it up. That was our old microwave. But it was too small for like sanitizing like milk bottles and stuff like that. So we needed a bigger one. We used that as an excuse to get a bigger toaster oven, which was last episode. And that one is app connected, so go listen to that. But this week we're talking about the Smooth Wave Microwave. And this is a normal size microwave, unlike our really small, cheap one for our small apartment. And I don't know what to say about microwaves other than this is a much better microwave than what we had. And I can compare it to digital microwaves. I have used those before. Namely, my parents have a fully functional digital microwave. And the main difference with this one is instead of having like a touch pad where you like have the numbers and you press the little buttons, you have a nice turning knob that's all clickety. So that's like one Breville standard is you have nice knobs. The LCD screen is also very clear in what it's doing. A neat thing is you can slam the door of this microwave and it will not slam. It will kind of like catch itself last moment and then smoothly click into place, and that's probably where the smooth part comes from. Its microwave functionality works like a microwave. You can set the power, you can set the time, and have fun. But it does have three smart buttons. And my favorite one of these, and the only one I really use, is a smart reheat button. And this basically you press that and you press start and that's it. You don't figure out time, you don't figure out power. And what it's doing is it's sensing for steam. And when it gets a sufficient amount of steam, it lowers the power, and then make sure it's like cooked through and finishes. And the secret to this is not sealing any food you put in there. So covering it so it doesn't like splatter, but always leave an opening for steam to get out. And so far it has done an excellent job at reheating pretty much anything we put in there. Cool. So A+ to that functionality. Didn't know I wanted it until like it was forced upon us by having a new microwave. But that is something that I wasn't expecting to actually like, and it works quite well. It does have like specialized buttons for like popcorn and all that, but they're all inside. So when you open the door, they're like on the inside of the door, and you don't see them anymore when you close the door. So it's like a very clean look. There's one for melting butter, which does not work with half sticks of butter, which I found surprising. I'm like, I don't always want to melt a whole stick of butter, but that is the minimum as a whole stick. So anything less than you get very melted
Liquid.
butter
Yep.
if you use that option, or you interrupt it halfway and it didn't quite do its magic. So I don't know how well that stuff works. I haven't really eaten microwave popcorn in forever either, so I don't really know how that works. But the buttons are there. There's also a button for pizza, which like I would never suggest microwaving a pizza, like toaster oven.
No,
a pizza.
toaster oven. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know why you would microwave a pizza, but apparently people do. Maybe I'll be courageous one day to try it.
Don't do it.
But I already have the fancy toaster oven to do pizzas with, so I don't know.
If you have, I think it's like, we definitely, like, I never grew up with a toaster oven, but I bought one when I moved out, and 100%, if you have leftover pizza, just put it in the toaster oven. It's actually good in the microwave. It's just rubbery and gross, so don't do it.
Good to know.
Don't even attempt. Yeah,
good to know from someone who has tried both that it is a world of difference.
Oh, absolutely. It actually tastes like you could have just got it out of the restaurant in the toaster oven. So
yeah, we always just use our like full size oven at home. Like we are of the family that buys more pizza than we can consume, and then we freeze the extra slices, so that way at any moment in time, like we want a slice, just pull one out of the freezer, unfold it from its foil, and just stick that whole thing in the oven at whatever high temperature you want to set the oven to. It doesn't really matter. You just check it in 5 minutes, it's done. So that's what we always did. But toaster oven, absolutely much better at controlling that in any capacity. And glad to know I should never use the microwave pizza button. But yeah, other than that, microwave 8+, it's a bit overpriced. It doesn't microwave better than any other microwave, but the dials, they're clickety, and it matches the toaster oven ish. So on that note, the colors didn't match because I got the gray one, and compared to the what does Apple call their dark gray finish? Their space gray. So I did not get the space gray microwave because there's no space gray microwave. They just have space gray toaster oven for $50 more, which we talked about. But the size also is ever so slightly different, which made me mad because I was like, I'm getting these two things and I was gonna stack them and it would be fine. But no, they're like off by 3/4 of an inch, which is surprising. Like you don't really notice it unless you're staring dead on it. But we ended up moving the microwave to a different part of the kitchen, which was previously occupied, but we cleaned up a bunch. Turns out having a baby causes you to clean up a bunch. And it's happier there. Like that is something, if you're considering it, to get the microwave on the bottom, toaster oven on top. Toaster oven is bigger than the microwave, so. And it's also like way high, so that was another reason why we didn't want to have it stacked. So yeah.
Cool. Also, speaking of Offspring, it looks like this has a child lock, so that's kind of cool. Not really an issue for you now.
I did not know that.
So well, good there to know.
You go. It's just something to figure out one day, I guess. Oh gosh, I need a child lock for the whole kitchen, don't I?
You're dang straight you do.
Yeah, we got those plug covers for like the plugs. Like we got those, and we got the corner protectors, so that way you can bash your head against corners and only sustain mild injury instead of death. So we got those, but we did not get any like cabinet locks.
I don't think you really need to worry about that right now. I mean,
yeah, we're still fine.
A year down the line or whatever.
Yeah, but it's gonna happen quickly, I feel like, and unless I have a plan, it's just gonna go down in chaos. I did loosely get tempted as I was fixing our door locks because August is like, oh, we also have cabinet locks. But then, like, I read something, oh, the battery died and now I'm locked out of my cabinet. So no thank you.
Yeah.
I already want to, like, wire up my door locks to be permanently wired because I hate replacing batteries every, like, 4 months. And I'm not... I don't listen to their suggestion of not using rechargeable batteries because I'm not going to ever use non-rechargeable batteries ever again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they die every, like, 3 to 4 months, and it's just... Ugh.
That's a pain.
I'm going to need to learn electrical engineering to wire something up because I don't know what I'm doing. But USB can solve my problems, surely.
Dang straight, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I ended up reading, like, I was watching a YouTube video, and someone basically suggested, hey, those little iPhone chargers that no one knows what to do with, they are basically the most compliant, perfect, like, USB power supply, 5 volts, 1 amp you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, while I had the chance, because I don't think they sell them anymore, I got a bunch of them for cheap. And I just had like a
Nice.
micro stockpile of them, which I used a ton of them for all these new USB-C devices that come out that are not actually USB-C, that don't come with a wall wart anymore. They just come with like a USB cable. And it's like, what are you supposed to do with this? I don't know. Use your old cell phone thing. So I like actually had a stockpile of these things
Nice.
that was useful for this. But the real reason I got it was that way one day when I learn enough about how to solder real electronics, I could use them as power supplies for all the things that would need batteries. One day.
Yeah, exactly.
As always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Please be sure to follow us on mastodon.social at Code Completion to know when new episodes go live, and feel free to toot at us if there's ever a topic you'd like to dig into. Most importantly, as a small podcast, please be sure to share this with your friends and family who are also interested in any part of the process of app development. It's your support that enables us to continue doing this, and we hope to grow a healthy community around everything we discuss. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who's at Spencer C. Curtis, that's SpencerCurtis, for joining me this week. My name once again is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buniol, that's DIMITRIBOUNIOL, and we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
I think we decided already. xrOS autocorrects the bros.
Yeah, that's so good.
Did it autocorrect for you too? I typed it like 3 times.
I haven't tried it.
I kept trying to type xrOS and it kept autocorrecting the bros. I'm like, oh gosh. This is now a thing.
Mine corrects to CEOs.
CEOs?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Bros is way better, though.
So my autocorrect is clearly better trained than yours, Spencer.
Obviously. I'm very business-oriented. You know me.
And I'm deep in the bro culture, clearly.
Yeah. Obviously.
Unknowns to me. That's what my autocorrect thinks of me. Oh man, autocorrect. Like, I swear, I may have gone much worse at typing English, and I get D and S mixed up, or autocorrect is the one doing it. I don't know anymore. Because as I'm like typing, it ends up sounding like I'm an idiot who's uneducated, who doesn't know how to type in their native language. Like misconjugating these verbs because it's either ES or ED, and it's always wrong,
Right.
and it's always wrong after I reread it. Like, not when I'm like typing it out. And I'm like, is this me? I truly don't know anymore. Did I get to the point where I'm like mistyping? Or is it like autocorrect that's just doing it because someone else didn't know how to type English properly and maybe they're
Right.
learning? Like, I don't know, but Apple shouldn't be learning based off people that are learning. They should just like use the language that hasn't really changed that much over the past few decades, that is like well understood for spelling corrections, right? Like,
Yeah. Yep. I know.
I don't know. On the topic of things that need spelling corrections, I have TOTK final review out on my counted out notes. Do we want to have final thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom now that you have completed the game?
Sure. Yeah, I just checked my Switch right before, and it's fine. You know how the Switch, if you go to your profile and you want to see how long you
5
played,
days
it'll say,
ago.
like, yeah, it's like, just give me the hours, dude. Finally, I just checked it today, and it says I've played 80 hours or more, which honestly is less than I thought. I thought I had topped 100 hours already. I can't remember if I said this in the last episode. I think I did, but I took a week off of work, so I had 9 days straight to play it.
And boy, did you use them.
Oh, I did. I probably averaged 10 hours a day. There was 1 or 2 days that I didn't play hardly at all, so I guess that makes sense. It's about 80 hours. Yeah, really good. Really, really, really good game. It's definitely tied for my number one favorite game of all time with Elden Ring. It's definitely topped Breath of the Wild, which didn't really think that was possible, but it definitely
It
happened.
ruined
So,
Breath of the Wild. I don't think,
yeah.
like, even just the mechanics wise, I don't think I can ever really enjoy, like, maybe after 10 years, I'll be able to, like, enjoy pulling out Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
But in terms of, like, polish, it really shows, like, what that game could have been if they had 6 more years, which,
Yeah.
like, they
They
had
did.
6 more years.
Yeah.
Even in COVID times, like, they really didn't show any signs of procrastinating or not doing the work. They did an absolutely amazing job.
Yeah. I'm really glad that it was like probably 2 years ago I went back and played Breath of the Wild again on Master Mode. Uh, so like I feel no need to go back, which is great. I think Dimitri said it best when it relegated Breath of the Wild to like tech demo hood. It's like there's way more variety, there's way more storyline, and I get that the storyline was kind of meant to be like you find it yourself, but Tears of the Kingdom does that, but also brings it a little bit more to the forefront, which is cool. But like variety in enemies, I think the way that they essentially solved the problem of weapon durability, which I think was hard for a lot of people. I didn't particularly enjoy how fast things degraded. They made that better with the fusibility. I mean, you get magnesis for anything basically, which was awesome. And being able to stick things together, and I didn't do anything wacky, but making your own, flying machines and stuff was cool. Not to mention all the things that people have done on YouTube and stuff is crazy. It's super funny to see people make like death lasers that just like fire 12 lasers while flying around the enemy. I mean, it's very cool. It's so early into, I think, what people can do. I'm excited to see what people do just for fun, but also like for speed running, I've very lightly been tracking what, speed runs have been doing. And I think it started out at about 94 minutes. I think Dimitri just said it's down to about 60.
Yeah,
And I'm
66
sure,
minutes or something.
yeah, so I'm sure it's going to get lower than that. I just saw that there was a patch for, it's like 1.1.2 or 1. Whatever.
There goes the duplicate item glitches.
Yeah, that fixes the duplication glitch, which is a bummer. But yeah,
honestly, it makes the game better. Like, it really does take so much away from the game if you can just duplicate anything you find. Because then the reason for exploration is just gone. Like, it really does break the game in a way that's like, it's a dopamine high in a way. Like, yeah, it's good in that moment, but then you steal the actual enjoyment away from, like, playing the game. And sure, like, people can say, like, oh, like, who can tell me how to enjoy what I'm, like, playing?
Sure.
But
it's a one-player game, yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, like, it's a very crafted, well-balanced experience that once you take away one of those balancing factors, it becomes mundane very quickly. So I'm kind of glad that they are patching that. If only because it just makes the game, like, it allows you to play it the way it's intended once again, right?
Yeah. I used it, but I'm definitely glad that like I had already done basically the entire game not knowing it. So it like had little effect. I upgraded some armor with it. I, got a bunch of diamonds for rupees because like rupees are freaking hard to find in that game, but that's about it. I sort of tried to limit myself mostly to things that wouldn't be game breaking for the most part, so that was nice. But yeah, my sister's wedding was yesterday on Thursday, so like
it interrupted all the gameplay you could have been doing. Just kidding.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, realistically, but it was like I got to the point where I took off work from Wednesday on. So Tuesday night is when I was like, okay, I know I'm not going to be playing for like 3 or 4 days. I'm going to finish the game. So I finished like the final story and everything, and it was awesome. Very, very kind of good way of finishing it off. And the last boss fight was fun. And yeah, there was some good stuff in there. So, but yeah, like finished all the shrines, finished all the light routes and stuff. So Didn't, do a ton of side quests and stuff. I kind of focused on just exploration, shrines and stuff. So definitely a lot more to do, but overall, like, no question in my mind, it's going to be game of the year for people, but also, the outlets that rank games and all that, and the Game Awards and everything is probably gonna get game of the year. And I guess to top it all off, it just sucks that Nintendo's the one that makes this, because Nintendo is a terrible company, and I hate that I bought 2 copies of the game, one in the collector's edition, and I hate that I give them money for them not being a better company ever. They've just continually gotten worse, and they're litigious Nintendo ninjas and all that. So
Well, it's like training a pet, right? You can only reward good behavior, so you're rewarding the good behavior. They made a good game, you reward them, right?
yeah, I guess so.
That's
It's just
the
a
closest thing I can
multi-billion-dollar
think of.
pet. I don't know. Yeah, you're right though.
Okay, so I have a few questions for you now that
Okay.
you're more or
Yeah.
less complete, with
Yeah.
just the stragglers left behind. What is your favorite fused weapon?
Anything super long is awesome. Like double like Lancer spears is fun. Dimitri came up with I don't know if you found this or on your own or just saw it online, but like the gloom spears or the gloom weapons.
Oh no,
suck
that
'cause-
was an original. I
Oh,
loved
that was an
using
original?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you use the gloom spear, you break your hearts like as if you walked in gloom. Dimitri found the idea of attaching a gloom spear, and I would always forget to attach weapons to other weapons. I'd attach like materials to weapons, but if you attach like the
I
gloom
never
weapons to
attach
something
materials.
else-
I'm like doubled up on weapons because I
Oh.
have like no more inventory space. I'm like, okay,
That's-
this one's unfused, dropping it, and then like refusing the weapons, and I'm like,
yeah, that's a good point.
but they're all
I
weak.
just would always
Yeah, it's a bad strategy. Don't do it.
Yeah, I would always have like like black bokoblin horns or whatever. Like the horns were a really cool idea and a good way of actually using materials, which I never really did in Breath of the Wild. So, but yeah, like fusing gloom weapons to some other weapon made it so that you got like plus 40 or whatever damage, but you didn't get the gloom effect. So that was super cool. But yeah, mostly just like long spears or whatever. It was awesome.
So on the long spears, do you attach something to your spear, or do you attach a spear to something else? So, for instance, if you have a spear and a sword, it's a really wide swinging sword, right?
Yeah, no.
But if you have a sword on a spear, then it's a very pointy spear.
Yeah, I think spears I think are like my favorite weapon class, and then swords, then great swords, because you're slow and you can't hit stuff with the great swords. So yeah, no, spears are I think my favorite
when everything is
Yeah.
attacking you at once.
Yeah, I would only use it on like bosses where you can like stop them for a second, then the spin to win is great, but other than that, doesn't. Yeah, so
Okay. Next question. What was your favorite area this time around? Like region of the map.
I don't know. It's hard to say. I think anywhere that there was like low gravity, because there's a few places that there's low gravity. So like getting up to the Zora Temple is super, or the Water Temple is super fun.
That broke the game for me. Like afterwards, I'm like, I want the low gravity again.
I know.
Give me
You feel
boots
like
or
super
something.
heavy. Yeah. All of in the sky, the labyrinths all have that. So that was fun, although it made it kind of trivial. But yeah, the low gravity is just like, it was a fun mechanic. I think I got to the Water Temple. It was my third regional quest, third temple. So like, it was very fun to like have a new mechanic to that. So yeah, I'd say anywhere that there was low gravity.
Cool. What was your favorite side quest or side adventure or whatever they call them nowadays? There's like 3 different kinds.
Yeah, there are. I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't think I've done a lot of them. Like I kind of laser focused on finding shrines and stuff. Something that was nice was the finding the bubble gems for Colton, because it sort of forced you to find a bunch of caves, and caves are just like a fun new part where It's not a dungeon, but it's some of them are super long, like the one under the shelters. So it's fun to find the bubble frogs, but like also you just like get into this whole new area, and it's like a different linear path, well, some branch and stuff, but it's fun to kind of be dungeon crawling and try to go through the whole thing in one go. So I'd say his quest, just because it got me to explore more.
Cool. And then did you complete it yet?
I got all of the armor, but then when he said, "Oh, hey, there's 101 left," I was like, "Oh!" And whatever you said about finding them, I didn't know about that at all.
Yeah, so if you look for the cherry trees, there's one per region. You can go ahead and offer a fruit there, and a Satori will pop out and then like point in the direction of all the caves, and then you just get like columns of light which show
Oh,
you where all the caves are.
that's nice. Yeah, no, I there were a couple times where I had gone to him and I was like one or two gems off, and so you can ask him
And he'll tell
where
you.
is one. That's what I've been doing to get all of the whatever mystic armor. But that's I'll have to do that, and maybe I'll do that because exploring caves is super fun. So it does that. It does the beams of light for like every region that you're in. You have to find the
Hmm.
cherry tree.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then it basically points out all the caves you haven't got a
How did you
bubble.
figure that out? Did it say that somewhere?
So I went to the cherry tree on top of Hateno, and the lady, the Gerudo lady that was like heartbroken because that's where the Broken Heart Lake is. Um,
Oh yeah.
because they have in their how to find a Vogue class, they have like, oh, go to this lake with the heart. Like it's clearly on
Mm.
their thing. So she went to the wrong one. But she was
Nice.
talking about the legend of a Satori from the cherry tree. And there's like a pedestal to offer a fruit, just like the old Korok puzzles.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so on that note, what was your favorite new Korok puzzle variety?
None of them.
None
I
of
think
them.
Koroks are like my least favorite part of the game, and as
Yeah.
soon I, yeah, haha. As soon as you like, you're in the tutorial place, and there's where you have to. There's like a Korok with a huge bag, so he can't move. I was like, oh crap, this is this again for real. And like you said, I think there's probably more Koroks than 900 in Breath of the Wild. So I've largely ignored them. I think total I found maybe like 90 Koroks.
Oh, that's it.
And yeah, like, and I know that I have like a my inventory is just, or I think I have something like 56 or so Koroks just sitting there, and I haven't found Hetsu. So I just get the weapon stash until it's like 20 Korok seeds each thing, and then I think I upgraded to be able to do like 6 shields and maybe 8 bows or so, and I just mostly pour it into the weapon, and that's it. So I go kind of low inventory, I guess, on that stuff because I freaking hate Korok. I mean, I will do them if they're like right in my path, but I don't go out of my way to look for them, basically.
Got it. And then next, what was your favorite enemy? Either new or old.
I thought the bosses this time were all really good. I didn't particularly like. I thought the Colgera, I think, and the Rito one was like kind of meh, but like
I think that's
the
your
go,
first boss
yeah,
kind of trip. I didn't know you could just stand on the ice and it would break. I was like shooting arrows
you
like an
never
idiot.
like you never jumped on the ice like when you were walking around.
I did, but I didn't realize you can stand on his ice. Like you can
Oh
just
yeah,
smash through it while skydiving. Like I saw
yeah.
that afterwards and I was like, wait, what?
I didn't do that. I've seen that, but yeah, no, I just shot bomb arrows, and I think that was it. But that was okay. I one thing. Okay, side note: the bullet time seems like a lot more forgiving in how much
Hmm.
stamina it uses. That's super
While
nice.
you're
While
shooting an
you're
arrow,
not,
yeah.
yeah, while you're not actually shooting. Um, yeah, the I can't remember what it's called. The version of Goma was fun. Um,
Marbled coma.
yeah, marbled Goma. I thought the water temple boss was okay. It got a little annoying in the second phase when it, yeah, but they were all unique, which was cool, and they're not just like what I I already forgot what they were called in Breath of the Wild. They didn't have the same look. They were all unique looking, so that was cool.
The Ganons that we shall not name.
Yes, the Blights. Yeah, I thought that was cool. I think in general, not having like 3 basic varieties of enemies was cool. Like they added the Horriblins and
the Gibdos.
Yeah, the Gibdos. The Gibdos were, yeah, you're right. They're terrifying when they actually start.
I didn't know that they crawled until the boss fight. And then they suddenly started like crawling at me at full speed, and that terrified me.
Yeah.
I was like, these aren't even scary. You just throw fire fruit at them and it's done. And then there's like 50 of them and all running. And I was like, not having a good time.
Yeah. That was cool. Like the boss bokoblins are cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's like one that is my favorite, but I just enjoyed that there was way more variety. And like the stuff in the depths, like the Froxes
are terrifying. I climbed the top of one of those fern things, which are like massive, like the ones that go all the way up and then like tilt so you can get to. And the freaking Frox like saw me and just hopped all the way and just like slammed me out of that tree, and then the fall damage killed me.
That's crazy.
With like 10 hearts. Like no amount of hearts is enough hearts without like good armor in this game. But yeah, the Frox, like just like walking in on one is unsettling because they move so quickly and they destroy you so quickly. Especially when you're like, oh, these little ones are not so bad. They're easy to deal with, and then there's the big giant one, and you're like, what on earth is this thing?
There's like one chasm where you dive directly onto a Frox, and you know, as soon as you're above it, it opens its mouth, no matter how you get above it.
So, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like if you like attach a bomb or a spring to your shield, as soon as you're in the air, it like opens its mouth like it's trying to eat you, like mama birding kind of. Oh no! So there's one chasm where you're just diving, and I'm not generally paying attention at a dive, so I
hardly
was like watching
see
a YouTube video.
The bottom. I love the sound though.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom.
Yes, Ascend is
so good.
Oh yes, as soon as you enter, it's so good. But yeah, no, and it just opened its mouth and immediately ate me, and I was like, what is this, dude? But so that was terrifying, and it was a place where it was completely dark too. So yeah, good all around. I mean, like, aside from like the performance issues that were also exhibited in Breath of the Wild, like I have nothing but good things to say about it. I don't really think there's anything that like could realistically be improved, except finding a better way to give me more inventory, because I hate Koroks. But that's a me problem. I acknowledge that.
Fair. I'm still looking for the Korok like hood or the helm that tells you where they are. Apparently it's in the game. That's all I know. But I have found a lot of Koroks so far. I especially like how the match puzzles are all like 3D now. So
those are cool.
It's a lot more 3D manipulation. And I especially like how this game is training everyone to be a 3D artist in some way by learning how to like
be able to use CAD.
Yeah, rotate things in 3D space as you get very good at it after a very short period of time. Excellent A+, great game development, great game for developing kids who need to like master that sort of thing if they want to get into like
awareness,
organic chemistry and dealing with like molecules and stuff like that. That becomes hard if you don't have like good spatial awareness. This game gives you spatial awareness whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's funny how like I sent Dimitri a screenshot of me trying to build a bridge on like the very first shrine. It was so hard for me to match anything up. It's so jank. I was like, I can't even line this stuff up, and you learn to, how many times you need to rotate something for it to actually be flat and stuff. So it's cool. They did that really well. Mm-hmm. Like being able to, you can do a lot and manipulate the 3D space in a pretty intuitive way once you get used to it.
Mm-hmm. How many times were you turning with your controller the first few times, like trying to like
Oh yeah.
orient it perfectly when using the motion
Yeah.
controls, but then you're going with it because we're bad at being humans.
Yeah.
So good. Anyways, go check out this game if you haven't already. It ain't going anywhere, but
No.
it is absolutely a joy. Whether you have 80 hours in a week to play it or you don't,
It's pretty digestible.
Yeah,
Like,
you can do it in much smaller portions, no problem.
Yeah.
So definitely go check it out. So good.
Yep. So good.
Anyways, bye everyone.
Bye.